you for joining us, Karen.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Do you ever get to see the results of the work you do with people, and is there one thing that really makes it all worthwhile?
What I do get a really big buzz out of is seeing people that come back months later and they've changed their whole life around. They've gone from almost being at that suicidal stage and getting back to how people deal with grief. I had an interesting case, which was a woman who had lost their family dog, and she had a newborn baby, and she couldn't pick up her child after the dog died. And for a period of around about 2 to 3 months, there was just a complete disconnect. There was no emotion that she felt towards the child. She didn't want to get out of bed. She was suffering depression. And I was a little bit concerned because I thought it might be postnatal, but it purely was, coming down to, she started thinking, when we got to the bottom of it, she had started thinking, how would I be if I lost my child? If this is how I feel after I've lost my family dog of 17 years, then how would I be if I lost my child? And she was terrified of possibly losing her child and the impact that it would have on her. Once we actually identified that that was the essence of it, she just moved on and made a full recovery and really, just ended up her happy self again and reconnected with her child. But for 2 to 3 months there, it was very, very, it was very fragile.
I can really understand that. And also at the other end of life, often perhaps I've heard stories where someone has been widowed and all they've got left is the late partner's pet. And they're terrified that pet might die, and that would be the last connection.
Yes, the connection, and that happens a lot. And finally, when that pet does pass, they are again grieving. The grief that they had for their partner or whoever they have lost resurfaces again. And on top of that, they're then having a double whammy, and they're grieving for two people.
And our veterinarians, of course, who do look after perhaps our pets all their lives. I mean, one of my dogs was days away from her 18th birthday when we had to put her to sleep, and the vets were just absolutely distraught because they loved her too.
Yes. Because they have a connection, and like you say, and especially as your pet starts to get older, that association, because of your increased visits to the vet, they're starting to build up more and more and more of a relationship. So when the pet's young and they go there once a year and they get their shot and they're all healthy and bouncy and they walk out, when they start to get into that, being the elderly sort of pet range, and they're there more frequently being monitored for, all of their little conditions. Yeah, the vets do grow very, very attached to them. And, even now with home euthanasia and all that kind of thing, vets find it very, very difficult in those situations. And like you, I had a 17-year-old dog, and Anne Fawcett, looked after her for pretty much, most of her life. And when we said goodbye, it was devastating all round. And it was nice knowing that somebody felt my pain too.
That helped both of you, presumably.
It does. But, again, getting back to vets and how much they take on board, over in America, they're now starting to look at ways to alleviate stress because of the suicide rate over in the States to do with vets. And they're looking at some practices are now only having a certain limit of euthanasias per week to try and alleviate the stress that it's causing, and also especially on the younger staff, And again, like, your receptionists and all those kind of people who are dealing with distraught people on their way out and having to ask them for money, So that in itself is really hard to manage.
What about pound workers who have to euthanize animals on literally a daily basis? I mean, surely there must be some stress there, or do they just...
Oh, huge.
Yeah,
huge.
How do they deal with that?
Huge stress. I think that usually it comes down to, in a lot of cases, you see it quite often, and it's substance abuse. So what will tend to happen is people will just drink a lot when they get home, or they'll, get into recreational drugs and all of that kind of thing just to alleviate it. Eventually it does take its toll, and a lot of those workers, either break down or they get out because they can't cope with it any longer.
My goodness. Well, look, we could spend hours talking to you, and
we could, couldn't we?
But I hope you'll come back again, and we'll talk some more. So thank you very, very much for being with us. If people want to contact you or find out more how they can help themselves and get your blog and things like that, what's your website, please?
It's PAWS, P-A-W-S, the numeral 4, reflection.com.au.
Cool. Well, we'll put that detail on our website as well. And thank you for caring enough to spend a little bit of time with us.
Thank you very much.
I'm actually amazed at what a happy, bubbly person she is, given the work she does. Karen Jacques.
Well, I think it's also because she gets monitored every year as well as part of
Right.
being a grief counsellor.
Well, she's a professional grief counsellor,
Yeah.
isn't she? So, yeah,
Yeah.
good point. And don't forget, the bottom line there really is seek help. Ask your vet, do you use a grief counsellor? If not, there are services available. I guess you just have to go online and Google that, or ring up your local community service outlet and ask them about grief counselling.
You don't have to suffer alone. It is normal and you can get help.